and welcome to another Magic of Fishing video. I thought today we'd do something on bait because in the second chapter of my book, The Magic of Fishing, I talk about learning my granddad's secret bread paste recipe, and that was on a June evening many years ago, about 45 years ago now, just before my very first fishing trip. And the way he showed me how to make that bait just added to the magic. I thought I'd try and recreate it and maybe even give it a go, see if we can catch some fish on it. Might take me a couple of videos to do that, but let me show you how it's done.
If you're talking about paste fishing these days, you could be into a whole debate and discussion about the specialist and commercial paste that are available, whether it's for carp and barbel fishing, stuff out of tubs, or the powdered stuff that's easily mixable into bagging style bait for commercials and matches. I love a bit of paste fishing myself, but I'm going to talk about something altogether different today.
And what better place to make this paste than the garage, or the garrison as it's also known. This is as close as I've got to a tackle den, and I was actually listening to a brilliant podcast with Bob Nudd the other day, four times world champion angling legend, and I think the one thing we've got in common is he's also got half a garage for fishing. He's also got a tackle room and somewhere to put all these many trophies, but he talked about having half the garage dedicated to fishing, and this is something I managed to achieve a few years ago when I built these units from scratch, good old wicks, installed it myself, learnt a few things along the way. And this is where I can now tinker with my tackle or bait. And yeah, let's give you a quick tour before I make the paste. Unfortunately, it's not all geared towards fishing. I've got some many chargers for many garden tools, toolbox, and some of the cupboard space is taken up by such interesting things as industrial sink and drain and blocker. But elsewhere, I've got my selection of feeders, some hook lengths. Probably the most expensive extravagance or investment was this fridge. Obviously got one in the kitchen, but this doubles up nicely as a bait fridge and somewhere to keep a few spare beers. In fact, it's unfortunately empty of bait at the moment, but at least I've got a few beers for the weekend. Some of the drawers do have fishing tackle in, and this one's got everything from a syringe for popping things up to PVA, spare spools, line, and perhaps the most important drawer is the bait drawer. This is my go-to when I've got no fresh bait in but I suddenly get a chance to go. Got everything from good old corn, uncooked hemp seed, prepared hemp seed, ground bait, and of course plenty of pellet. But again, this video isn't about those more modern baits, fish meal based pellets and ground bait that we've all come to know and love and catch plenty of fish with. So let's get back to basics with some good old school bread paste. Now, the first thing you're going to need is a bowl and a wooden spoon, preferably wooden, keep it old school. It needn't be a Pyrex bowl like this, but this is the kind of bowl I remember my granddad using, so I'm keeping it real. Now, the second and probably most important thing you're going to need are the dry ingredients, and we're talking about some stale white bread, some less stale fresh flour. And when I say stale, I'm really just talking about leaving a few slices out for a couple of days and nights, nothing more special than that. You could use fresh, but when it's nice and rock solid like this, it breaks down a bit more easily with the liquid. And talking of liquids, really, we're talking about a couple. One is a kettle of boiling water or warm water, and the other is a drop of milk. Nothing more complicated than that. Which brings us to the secret ingredients, or certainly my granddad's secret ingredients, which he first told me about when I was a 5-year-old lad in his kitchen in Sheffield, and they certainly filled me with wonder at the time and caught us a few fish, and I'm hoping to prove that they still work. So let's get to the magic bit. Now, if you've read the book, first of all, thank you for your custom. Hope you enjoyed it, but you'll also know that one of his ingredients to add a bit of sweetness was good old honey. Here we've got a jar ready and waiting. But the most important And the secret of ingredients was, of course, custard powder. Good old birds. And I still remember him prizing the lid off a tin all those years ago, 45 years ago, showing me how it added not only flavour, a bit of vanilla, but also colour to his bread paste. So let's get mixing. Now I've only put a couple of slices in there, that's all I'll need for quite a few sessions, so there's no need to get through a whole loaf or anything. Got my boiling water and I'm just going to carefully put a little bit of that on the bread. Not soak it completely, but just to start breaking it down. And then you can use your wooden spoon to, much like mashed potatoes and a masher, just start working it through. My granddad liked to add a bit of milk, perhaps added a bit more flavour. Now this is much like good feeding of your swim, this is best done little and often, so start with a tablespoon, we'll see what that does. But you're looking for something that's thick enough to stay on the hook, but not so firm that it's going to mask the hook on the strike. So we'll add a bit more there, but we don't want it to get too thick. So I'm continuing to add the flour. It's getting harder to stir, but before I add any more, I'm just going to add the honey at this stage, otherwise it's going to be harder to work it into the finished bait. So this is the first real fish attractor, other than the bread itself, of course, and maybe a touch of milk. I'm not going to go crazy with it though, because remember this is bread paste, not honey paste. So it's just 1 teaspoon to add a little bit of sweetness. And that is almost getting there. It's sticking to the spoon and getting pretty hard to mix. And this is where I'm going to add the secret ingredient, or the custard powder. Why now? Why at the end, you may ask? Well, because it's the secret ingredient. This was the last thing my granddad showed me, so probably best to mix it with the dry ingredients first, but this is the way he did it and therefore the way I'm going to do it. So for anyone who's not made custard from scratch before, or certainly not old-fashioned custard that doesn't involve the use of eggs and other trickier ingredients, this is a tin of birds, and this is what my granddad used, and managed to persuade my wife Rachel to grab me one. And really it's just I think it's sweetened corn flour with a bit of vanilla in it and a bit of colouring. It looks kind of pinkish or white when it first comes out, but once wettened down, of course, you're going to recognise a slightly more familiar shade of yellow. So let's get that worked into the paste. And it's still warm, but at this stage that last bit of custard powder has dried the mix up enough for me to start kneading it or mixing by hand. And the more you work at that, the more elastic you're going to get out of the flour and the custard powder. The easier it'll stay on the hook without being too firm. And there you have it, the finished article. Nice and squidgy, but doesn't stick to my hands too much now I've put that extra custard powder in. Smells pretty good, not too strong, just a faint aroma of vanilla, and likewise it's not bright yellow, it's not like sweet corn or anything, but just a tinge of custard colour there. So now I've got something to put in my bait fridge. Now of course you don't need a bait fridge, a normal fridge or even somewhere cool will keep it good for a few days. I'm going to keep it old school and go with my granddad's methods, because he always used a bit of greaseproof paper to store his paste in. So I'm just going to fold it over in that. That'll keep it from drying out, and we'll shove it in the fridge. So that is how you make my granddad's bread paste, or the secret recipe custard bread paste from the magic of fishing. I hope you've enjoyed this little cookery tutorial, if we can call it that. And if you have, please subscribe to the channel. I'm new to this game and I gather that's where it's at, and subscribers. But also give it a like, share with friends, and of course feel free to leave a comment if you've got any old school baits that you still enjoy using or would like to see me attempt to use. Stay tuned as well, because I do hope to get out on a local water if the weather stays nice, as it has been for a few days now, and show you that this bread paste does work, still catches fish today. perhaps use some of my granddad's old tackle. So yeah, keep an eye out for that and see you soon.